Hi, everybody. I really want this to be an authentic sharing because we know at Talent Trust that board relationships can be tricky, they can be wonderful, they can really accelerate what you're trying to do. And we've seen, I would say if I'm being honest, over the last 10 years, sort of the good, the great, the excellent, the bad, and the ugly with boards. So today's session is really about talking how you guys can source, how you can develop really strong board relationships and use that as an enabler. There's a lot of organizations, EDs, and I guess a question I have before I continue, how many of you are EDs, executive directors, founders? Okay. How many of you all have boards? Everyone's got a board? Okay. And how many of you would say, and this is safe space, forget the camera at the back, and your heads are against the camera, don't worry. How many of you would say you have a high-performing board? Okay, all right, that's good to know. That's good to know. Okay. Oh, that's a yes? Oh, that's just a chat. Okay. I'm going to throw it out there. If we had to think about in your minds where your boards are at now and your relationships with your boards, just as an opener, and we think, what would a high-performing board look like for me and for my organization? What words come to mind, or what would that look like for you guys? And I point and I get people talking, so forgive me for that. I know some people are chewing, so Ibrahim, lead off, please.
Strategic.
Yes? Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Strategic. So they're helping devise and set the strategy for their organization. Yep. Perfect. Anyone else? PAL, the folks whose names I know.
Resourceful.
Resourceful. What do you mean by that?
Have like context.
Yeah.
Global.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're willing to use those contacts. Yeah. Okay. Super. Simran.
Collaborative.
Collaborative. I love that.
Yeah, rather than hierarchical or just waiting to be told.
Yeah, like thought partners almost, right? Yeah, lovely. I'm running out of names. Anyone else on this table?
Okay, the goal, I think, is to ensure that the senior management are running the organization in the interest of the organization, not based on individual interests.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, lovely. Lovely. Okay. Back table over here.
They understand the charity setting very well and are familiar with what is required.
Yep.
By standard practice.
Yep. And if they don't understand it at the start, that's okay, and we can help them understand it, and they can help each other understand it as well. And the table at the back here. Hi, Vincent.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
They just joined, so they did not know.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, we asked, like, what's a high-performing board? So if you had to envision your organization where it's at now, and then if my board was really high-performing, what would it feel like for me as the executive director? Or what would it look like in board meetings?
I think for us it's more a matter of what is your organization? Is your board an executive board or is it a strategic board, right?
Yes.
For small organizations we tend to be more hands-on, more executive,
100%.
while for large ones you expect them to detach themselves from the daily operations
Yes.
and more to a strategic vision in the long term.
Yeah, awesome. That's an excellent point. We dig into that around the stages of maturity and the different types of boards at the different stages of organizations and stages of maturity that you guys are all at. Because it does differ very much, and the board will transition. And the two folks that we have, just to share a bit more about them, for our fireside chat, they're really lovely, lovely people. Shavi started out as a Talent Trust volunteer. He was on a project with Samaritans of Singapore for about a year. He was invited to join the fundraising committee after the project. Now he's officially a board member and he chairs the fundraising committee. his own personal journey and career has changed immensely. He used to be the MD of Arts and Entertainment. He's out of that. He's now working for a foundation, a sports foundation. So very, very much in the impact space now. And Valerie Chu is on a few boards, Kidney Foundation and SOS as well. So just feel free to ask any of the pressing questions that you have. And we're gonna start and get into it now, but thank you for opening up.
Okay, thanks. Today, I think what we're going to go through, some of it will be really, really basic for some of us here, but just to even the playing field and everyone, so that everyone is on the same page as we go along. So I'll go through a little bit about what Board 101, right? Some of the things, some of the terms that we come across when dealing with boards. What are some of the things that our board members actually, what roles do they actually play, and what do they actually do on a day-to-day basis? Then we'll be talking a little bit more into building our board. How do you build an effective high-impact board? And then later on, I think the activity, we may not have a lot of time, but this is where I want to sell our practice labs. We'll pass out the templates, but if you do want to go through this in depth with us, you can just book a session with us through our practice labs as well. And then later we'll go through the fireside chat with Valerie and Shocky. All right, so without further ado, I'm just going to dive in. Now, there are a lot of terms being thrown out about, board directors, committee members, trustees. We hear this all over. And for Talent Trust, I think for us initially, a lot of for me, when I first joined Talent Trust, I had a lot of confusion as well. Like, who are trustees? What are board directors? How is that different from a committee member? And then what are the differences in terms of responsibilities between a board director and then an executive director who may or may not be an actual director? So there's quite a lot of terms being thrown out. But to boil it all down, I think in terms of responsibility and focus, I think those are the differentiating factors. Board directors, ultimately, they're legally responsible for the organization. They can be liable for, they will be liable for the organization if there are things that go awry. So that's mainly the focus of the board. For governance, to make sure the organization moves forward. Committees are set up mostly to tackle specific areas. You've heard of fundraising committees, you've heard of finance committees, investment committees. So they are set up to really focus on these specific areas. And they can be mostly chaired by board directors, but it can be completely helmed by volunteers as well. So at Talent Trust, we have a committee that has a lot of volunteers, our marketing and comms committee. So they are a lot of volunteers that come along us to look at our marketing and communications areas. But we also do have certain committees like our fundraising committee, which a lot of our board members sit in as well. And then of course staff, we do all the day-to-day heavy lifting, operational work and all that. All right, so the first thing is, you notice after majority conversations, I got really excited and I did this. So a board director typically wears these 3 hats. In my mind, these are the 3 hats that they wear, but of course there are so many different others, right? And I'm really happy to hear that some of these are validated by everyone here. Strategic, context, that's being an ambassador, governance, understanding, sector knowledge, understanding, and providing oversight to the executive director and the staff team. And today we want to go through a little bit about the 3 different hats of board leadership. Governance, mainly a lot of our board members are there to firstly ensure that the organization maintains good governance. So they will have a lot of different things that they have to ask. For example, currently I'm in the middle of audit process. Our treasurer, our audit committee will ask me questions. Hey, where is this income supposed to be classified? What are we doing with this? How do we approach that? So a lot of what that falls under is really ensuring the organization is governed well and set up for the long term. An ambassador, I think this is where a lot of us think about board members being out there speaking on behalf of the organization and also opening up doors to connect the organization with their personal networks, whether that's donors, whether that's people from within the sector, outside the sector, bringing in volunteers, bringing in all sorts of resources to set that organization up for success. But I think one of the parts that a board plays that is really, really important is also the strategic hat, where the board will often sit and position the organization for success, not just now, but in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years' time. How do you chart a course for the organization? Oftentimes, a board member wears all 3 hats simultaneously. So for me, when I work with some of our board members, I have to make sure that I understand which hat they will have to wear at any one moment. If I talk to our treasurer, it can, most likely it's because of the governance side of things, but also it could be strategic side. How do we deploy our resources so that Talent Trust can make sure that we can deliver on the impact that we want to deliver on. So keep this in mind, because this will be really important later on when we see how the 3 hats actually affect how our board members really think about certain things as well. Okay? Now, I know some of us here are familiar with the different phases of non-profits life cycle. There are many, many different phases. We choose to highlight 3 because that's the focus of Talent Trust. We work with non-profits across these different stages of a non-profit: startups, growth, and the established non-profits. So a quick, just wanting a quick raise of hands. How many of us here are in an organization that you think is in the startup phase? A couple here, quite a lot. Growth, how many? You're not quite a startup, but you're already on the way there. A couple. And established? Any here think, yes, my organization has been, we're here for a while, we're a little bit stable, we can do a lot of different things. Yeah. So a little bit of a mixture, but mostly towards the startup and growth areas. One of the things I wanted to share as well as, if you see here all these different features that we have, or some of the characteristics of organizations in the startup, growth, and established phase, these are based on our experience working with organizations as such. But one of the really important things to note is it's a continuum. Some of us may have characteristics, or we are really far advanced in terms of our predictable income sources, but still policies may be lagging behind a little bit, which is okay. I think a lot of us may be either in one or the other category. These are some of the common challenges that we see. Mainly startup, you're working, you're trying to get things off the ground. Growth, you're looking to expand and doing a lot of wonderful things that you guys are doing. And then the established is really about how do you sustain that growth in the long term. Okay? And yeah, remember the 3 hats? What we realize is that in each phase, there are typical, very, very typical needs. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just going to put it here to see whether, and to ask whether this resonates with you. For us, I think at Talent Trust, we have gone through, we are currently, I think, in the growth phase. We finished formalizing a lot of our policies last year. We realized that, that's when people or board members who have experience in governance, who are used to wearing that governance hat, are really, really important in terms of our own board journey as well. But we also realized that for us, having board members who are willing to open doors, who are willing to connect us to people that are able to put us in positions to deliver better impact, whether that's donors, whether it's corporate partners, and so on and so forth. Those are really, really important as well. So these, again, are just typical priorities. I want to hear maybe now from you guys, this is something that I've put there. What are some of the priorities for you guys, let's say in the startup phase, that you find that you really, really need your board in some of the gaps that you've identified that a board member has really helped in the past before? Just go. Who are the people in the startup phase again? I'm going to ask that question.
There's a lot of hands.
Yeah, there was a lot of hands. Yeah, so do you work with boards?
Yeah.
So in your experience, like currently in the startup phase, what are some of the needs, whether they're here or not, that you've experienced, that you thought, oh hey, maybe this is the priority of my board now.
This is the what?
Priority of my board.
More like reputation building for the organization because the organization is so new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the entire management is unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Then we rely a lot on our board's reputation to establish conversations with people. There is still board are not involved, but because the names are there, so they help people talk to us.
I see. So the people talk to you because of who's on your board.
Yeah.
So in a way, they're acting as that ambassador,
Yeah.
but more silently,
Yeah.
just letting it. Anybody else anybody here has the same sort of experience going through that as well, or something a little bit different?
I think for us it's a bit different because we've been around for a while before registering. So like there's some traction, but I wouldn't say, but it's very through word of mouth. So that's the part that's different. I think what's helpful is the organizational development and especially on the financial like compliance and just having somebody to, oh, is this on the right track? And even like, board meeting, then what are the formal procedures to highlight and take note of, even down to this level of detail. So I think we just had a board meeting like a couple weeks ago.
Still fresh.
still fresh on the head. So like working out these details and having like some guidance from somebody who has been actually on the board before and setting maybe the norms that will on what.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Florence. And I know that you just started on that journey. I think you registered last year, 2 years ago. Yeah, so I think as you know, as organizations grow, you do see a lot of changes in terms of the priorities that they have. And always, for me, it's always, again, going back to that 3 hats, right? Remembering what are the current priorities that our board directors may have will really depend on what hat they are currently wearing as well. And it works the other way around. So that's where building a board is really, really important because some of the organization's priorities will determine what sort of board members that you will need. Oops. So first question a lot of people ask is where do we find board members, right? These are the places I can share. I think the most important thing to point out is nominations committee. Quick show of hands, how many of us here knows about what a nominations committee is? We have a nominations committee in our organization. Yes, no, have, mixture of some. Yeah, I think for us, what we've come to realize is nominations, the role of the nominations committee is really, really important in terms of identifying the right board member, right? Yes, we can go to Board Match, Institute, SID, LinkedIn, looking through your volunteers, your funders, asking people for it. But having someone from your board, that nominations committee, owning that process and really thinking about how this individual would fit in your existing board and what they would give to the organization, that's really what sets it up for success. Okay? So some of the roles of the nominations committee that we found that really help think or identify who you need. It's really some of these skills gaps, diversity gaps. Later on when we pass out the template, a lot of these are already there for you to think about. But it is really the role of the nominations committee to look into all of these things. I'll give you an example in terms of skills and diversity gaps. I think for some of us, we may have a board from a growth stage or in a startup stage that's really made up of friends and family. Are we diverse enough? Do we have the diverse skill sets to be able to meet the challenges the organization has right now? So identifying that, whether it's you have the perspectives from the sectors you need. Is it all just, to quote no one, but to say, hey, is it all just old white men in our organization, or do we really have that diversity of perspectives that and skill sets to bring into that particular challenge that we want to solve, or that stage of growth that we have. Also, I think another important point is the networks and experience. As I shared, right, one of the important hats a board member wears is the ambassador hat. So having that professional network and having the ability to share of their resources in terms of their networks, I think that's also something that may be a consideration for you when looking for a potential board member. Okay, so later on I'll pass around this wish list. We actually have a little template that has some of these things. I'll go through it a little bit later. We may not have time to go through every little thing, but it helps us really articulate and identify what are the important aspects or skill sets that we really do need in the organization.
And so our process, so how we cultivate now, is we do have a nominations committee. It's comprised of 3 people. We do the gap analysis, and then we say, okay, let's think who's in our network and who fits these skills. So we have someone, our treasurer, who will be stepping down after 6 years. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. In Singapore, he sits on many, many boards. He's amazing. He's our go-to for a lot of things. It's a big gap for us, right? So we had to ask him, who in your network do you feel could step in? So we've got someone who's taken on a treasurer role, but it was that governance bit that we really needed, because no one else in our board, off the record, really has that depth of knowledge of governance. So that was our remit, and we had a long list, so we cultivated a long list. We had discussions around that. And in our organization, typically, whichever board member has the relationship with that candidate would put the feeler out. And then say, hey, Shavi, we're looking for someone, we need someone with governance experience. You've been on SOS board. We're looking to do X, Y, Z in the next few years. This is why we think you would add value to our board. Would you be open to a conversation? So it would look and sound something like that. Candidate would say yes. Then they would meet with the chair of the nominations committee. Expectations, I'm really clear about expectations. I am an asker. I ask people to do things, and I think the executive directors have to do that. You have to be clear in these meetings. We've seen some, through our work, some executive directors going, oh, we really, really need you, but you don't have to do anything. We just need you on the board, but there's no work. But there is work. There's committees. There is real work to be done. We're very comfortable now, and I think our board chair is very comfortable now, telling people outright, we need you to tap your networks. Fundraising is a priority for us. We will be asking you to help out with that. We'll be asking you to open your networks actively. So we do that in that meeting. We didn't do that a few years ago, but we're quite open about it now in a casual, not hard sell way, not to put people off. We're really vibe checking, and we have had meetings where someone, for example, who's sat on many very well established, like that ultra established organizations that have been around for 50 plus years, they're totally different than us. They're big, they have multiple divisions, they're really different, we're small, right? So seeing the questions that candidate was asking our chair, how often do you and the executive director meet? I feel you should be meeting, every 2 weeks. That's what I do, and you can see our chairs like, that's not going to work for us, right? So that sort of vibe check is really important as well, to see if there is that fit beyond the skills. Are they going to fit with the rest of the board members as well? And do you feel as ED that you can build a strong relationship with them as well? Defining the ambassador role. So what it looks like, making it clear. We need you to open networks. What that looks like. When we have our annual golf event, we would love if you can forward the sponsorship letter to some of the companies that you know. We'd love if you can invite some of your friends. We'd love if you can, buy a table at our fundraising dinner. Blah, 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 blah. We're really specific. This is what it looks like, so they know, and there's no surprises. And I think that's about it. Asking questions, listening, and then sometimes at the end of that conversation, it's just done. You know, it's a really good fit, and they say, yes, I really would love to come on board. And sometimes it's not. So for those that sort of aren't over the line, some possible follow-ups would be invite them to your programs. Why don't you come down to our organization? Why don't you see what we're doing with our beneficiaries? We'd love for you to come down and learn more about our organization. Sharing information, your annual reports, your impact reports, share widely so they get a sense of what you're all about and how you do your work and what your mission is and the values of your organization. We invite them to meet the other nomination committee members, so they're meeting more folks on the board and getting a feel if they think there's a good fit. And alignment, seeking alignment after. We always do like a debrief. What do you think? You know, are they gonna fit? What do we feel about this person? That is super important as well. But I think what I've seen is there's often hesitation or a reluctance to communicate clearly about your vision, your strategy for the organization, and how they can add value to your organization. And there's often ambivalence or hesitancy around saying we need you to be an ambassador, and we would expect everyone on the board to do this. And in my experience, when we have those conversations, no one's like, no, I don't want to, and run away. They know, you know, when they're at that level, they know. So it's really important to be authentic, be open, and share what the expectations are. And okay, we've got some resources. I'm sure many of you know about this already. We are not COC. There's some great templates on there. Again, for you folks that are in that startup phase, where you're thinking, I don't have terms of reference. How do I write terms of reference for my committees? I don't have, job roles. I don't have clearly defined roles for my board members. It's all on there. So I'd suggest you use it, access it, and put that into use. And board appointment guide for charities as well is super useful. And
So the activity here, the template, feel free to take a lot of it. We printed out quite a few. In the interest of time, we won't go through the entire activity. But I remember that we do have the practice labs. So if you are looking at, thinking about expanding the board or having changes in your board, you can just book a session with one of us, Talent Trust, and we'll just walk you through how to use the template and how that will really help guide you in terms of identifying who may be the next board member. Yeah. So for us, I think more than just having Lisa and I talk to you about our perspective and what our experience working with just Talent Trust board, we've invited Shoggy and Valerie to share some of their experiences on the board side. So Shoggy, as Lisa shared, he's been on a Talent Trust project. He's volunteered with Talent Trust. He also shared as one of the library books, human library books, last year at the TMT Majurity Masterclass. So if you attended that, you may have heard a little bit from Shoggy as well. Currently, maybe I'll leave you to introduce yourself. Otherwise, I'll just go through everything. And Valerie is currently on the board of Kidney Dialysis Foundation and also on the fundraising committee of SOS. So Shoggy and Valerie are both on the same committee. So you can ask them about how they work with each other as well. So Shoggy and Valerie, maybe we'll invite you to sit in this really high chair. Okay. Yeah, that happens as well. Sometimes we Okay, maybe we'll start off by getting you to introduce yourself. What's your professional background a little bit, and maybe your journey with non-profit boards. How do you end up in a non-profit board?
So I've been in the pharma industry for the past 20 over years in different roles, from the commercial end to finance, and then technology. So that's it's my passion. Healthcare is my passion. Medicine's my passion. People are my passion. So that's something that I've always loved to do. More recently, so 2 years ago, I've always wanted to give back, right? In some way, didn't know exactly how. I didn't really have the time either because I was traveling so much previously. But I had an opportunity to kind of find more time to do this, and so I started actually with SOS. Not really healthcare per se, but it's mental health, which to me is part of the broader healthcare and incredibly important. After which, I started. There was an opportunity. They were looking for a board member at KDF. And it's perfectly down my alley, so I said yes. I want to do this. I want to give back. So it was that was a bit of the journey. It wasn't so intentional per se, and I didn't wake up one day thinking that yes, I want to be a board member, but it just evolved.
Thank you. So Shoghi, 25 years in advertising, media, and entertainment. Passion is actually storytelling. And that's what led me to the career that I had. And again, for me, it wasn't so much about waking up one day and saying I want to be a board member. It was actually during COVID when none of us were traveling. I had a job that involved a lot of travel when none of us were traveling, and I could see the impact that COVID was having on younger team members across Asia in terms of mental health. And I was like, I have time. What can I do? And I got introduced to Talent Trust, and they presented a menu of organizations, and I chose SOS, and it was a mentorship project. And I think what happened there in that mentoring journey was we gave our recommendations to SOS, right? And I felt a little bit like, and if there are any consultants in the room, I apologize, but I felt a little bit like a consultant who was going to give these recommendations and then not be bothered with the consequence, right? And so I walked up to SOS and I said, I don't think I'm done here, because I want to see these recommendations, then what is the impact it has on the organization. And that's how then I went into SOS first as a committee member, and then later on the board. And that really has kickstarted a journey where I took a career break, and now I'm actually sitting in 2 different organizations, one in Singapore, and recently my other passion is sports. And so I've joined a foundation in India which is in the world of grassroots sports. So that's my journey.
Oh, thanks.
And along the way, and actually, you were talking about the nominations committee, and so the SOS Governance and Nominations Committee, it's GNC, is a perfect example of how sometimes the work is good. I was looking to expand. I was looking to expand the fundraising committee, and the GNC always keeps a list of people that they have interviewed, whose CVs they have, and they said this might be a match.
Wow.
So that,
It's true. I forgot about that actually.
there you go.
Awesome. Yeah. Right. So to shift gears a little bit, I know just now we asked, and a lot of us here are from the startup boards. Even earlier, when I think Vincent shared the difference between an executive board and a strategic board. So what we experience, or what I've experienced talking to a lot of even some of my friends who have startup nonprofits, is initially you have sort of like a working board. You do have board members that you need to do the work and do some of the heavy lifting as well. So, question: at what point do you think in the journey of the organization does this actually become like a liability that the board is doing a lot of the work and doing more operational work when oversight is required? So I just want to hear from Shoghi, how do you begin to transition, or when should a founder, in this case, transition from more of an operational board to that of an oversight type of board?
This is being recorded, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Just
So
say
off
off
the
the
record.
record, and then it'll be cut.
No, I mean, I have a bias towards simplicity. And in simplicity, I would say your board should become an oversight board as soon as possible. It's not just from, when you think about it from delineation of roles, from a regulatory framework, from a liability perspective, not liability as is the board a liability, but what is your liability? What are a board members' liabilities and responsibilities? So, yes, in the beginning, it's nice to have a working board, but your board is a collection of either well-meaning individuals or friends and family, especially in the startup phase, who are there because they feel the need to give back. But if, as a founder, you start making assumptions of the board's time, no matter if you've made the expectations clear, at some point in time, it starts to sort of very quickly blur the lines between staff and board. And you want to get away from that as quickly as possible. Because then reporting lines get blurred, right? Like, who are you working for? Authority gets blurred, and as a founder, you want to spend more time doing the mission. At the end of the day, the mission is to serve those in need, right? That's why it's a foundation. And doing the mission rather than managing people and relationships and who said what. So I would say as soon as possible.
Cool. Yeah. So then I would like to add on to that. Just ask, a lot of young non-profits as well. I know like Accra, when you want to transition from a ground up to a CLG, you must have 3 people whose names are on a piece of paper. So maybe thinking back in that regard, what are some of the green flags or milestones? I know as soon as possible is great, but if the organization is not ready, that may cause more issues down the line as well. So what are some of the green flags or milestones that an organization should hit before really transitioning that board to one that is more like a professional oversight board?
So I think they're internal and external drivers, right? So internally, I think the executive directors or the founders they start to feel overwhelmed by the complexity sometimes of the organization because it's growing quickly, it becomes more complex in nature, it starts to feel overwhelming and difficult to manage, right? That's one thing. The other internal factors also, it starts to sometimes feel a bit lonely at the top because you feel like there's nobody else you can speak to or bounce ideas off or challenge you, right? And then you start to feel like, oh, okay, I think this is right, but am I really? And you start to have these questions floating about, and you start to feel like there isn't somebody in your organization that you can have that discussion with. So that's I think, kind of some of the internal green flags. And externally, when your donors, your regulators, your auditors start to ask questions that your board may not be able to answer properly, right? All these stakeholders then feel that you're not in a position to answer that quickly and properly. Then there's this external push, and that will be reviewed very quickly, right? As these people start to ask questions. So that's a very clear, I think, kind of green flag that you need to progress to having a more oversight board.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that transition can be really tough as well, because as a founder, I mean, I'm not a founder of any organization, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I can imagine as a founder, like having your first professional board is almost akin to hiring your own boss. So how do you get, and I would love to hear Shoki and Valerie answer this as well, how do you get into that right mindset to say, okay, it's beyond just, these people are going to slow me down and stuff like that, but really having the right mindset shift to saying, okay, now my board is a resource that can really help my organization down the line.
Okay, thank you. I would say that it's a mindset shift that's not just about, as you said, hiring your own boss. it's a mindset shift where you say, am I ready to transition this from a passion to an institution? You know, and that's a very important sort of milestone in your own head, because on that transition journey, where I think we'll come also later as to when is the right time for a founder to step off, right? Your first step towards building an institution is the maturity to handle a board, right? And yes, as Valerie pointed out, there will be external factors and internal factors, but the difficulty of going on that journey is almost, I would say, an ability to say that the cause is now so important that I need to, paradoxically, detach myself a little bit from it. You know, because the more attached you are, the more chances of you being blindsided by something. And how do you then go from ground up to saying now the institution is mature enough that I can take the 10,000 feet view, and therefore my board can take the 20,000 feet view. You know, and so that would be my sort of view.
I think just taking a step back, right, and thinking about founders and whoever started this organization. I think most of you, I mean, I don't know how many of you are actually founders, but if you take a step back and think about why you even started the organization, right? It was not for yourselves. You started this organization to make an impact on some group of people, some animal, whatever it is, whatever the cause may be, right? And if you think about that and you think about what a board should be doing, the board should really be supporting you in going and creating that sustainable organization beyond just yourself, right? So it's it becomes bigger than you and what you want to do, and the board is really there to help you do that from multiple angles, right? Help you govern your organization better, help you protect the organization better as well, and help you ensure that there's longevity and sustainability over a period of time, beyond just now or 2 years from now, but creating almost that legacy that you have set up to want to create, right? So I think that's how I would see it and think about it.
Actually, before you comment, how many of you are founders? Show of hands. Quite a few. And in terms of size of organization, less than 10, how many? Less than 50? Okay. Just to get an idea.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think that's really important too. Like, especially really relevant to a lot of us here as well. I think I wanted to shift gears a little bit to talk more about managing a board, like, especially from a non-profit leader versus non-versus, but together with the board kind of perspective. I think one of the points that we got earlier in the day is collaborative board. It's a high-performing board, and we often find that the ED board relationship is really, really crucial to driving the organization forward. So maybe Shogi, I wanted to ask you from a board member's perspective now, right? What are some of the things that an ED, a non-profit leader, or even non-profit staff can do in terms of communicating actions they can take to build that rapport as quickly as possible with the board?
I think this is it's super important, and one of the things I would say is as a board member, and the term like I like to use is nose in, elbows out. You know, so you should know what's happening, but don't get in there and crowd the staff, right? So sorry, but equally from an ED or from a staff member's point of view is how proactive are you with communication, right? Typically, depending on the size of the board, you don't want board meetings to be the place where information gets uncovered, or where if you anticipate something is likely to be contentious, then to seek counsel before you go. In a private sector organization that's very famous for being ruthless, they call it sunshining. Like, have you put things out in the sun, so that everyone can see it? So anything that you feel, and that's how you also create a board that feels invested and participative, right? Is to be aware of issues, to, when board members, that typical 30 minutes before a board meeting starts, when you kind of seeing each other, and unless there have been special meetings, you're seeing each other after 2 months, 3 months, whatever. And in that, it's very quick when you see the agenda that, oh, did he or she speak to you about this, and are we good? So even before the board meeting has happened, you kind of know that the person in charge has actually done the work of creating consensus and therefore feeling confident to bring it on as a board agenda, right? Because who's deciding the board agenda? It's usually the chair and the ED, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so to be able to do that rapport, I think is a key part of being a foundation head, and being very proactive about it. The other one that we would always say, and we said it in corporate enough times as well, is you can hide the good news for all you want, but don't hide the bad news. Let the good news be a moment of surprise in the board meeting. That's fine. Everyone will clap, everyone will be happy, but don't choose the board meeting to be the place where you want reveal a problem. It usually is the place where you reveal a solution.
Yeah. Speaking of hiding the bad news, sometimes small organizations, especially in the non-profit sector, speaking from experience, I work with a board that has really big names, really well-established people, right, on our board. So one of the things that I think for me is firstly getting over the hump that it's really sometimes, this person must be really busy, must be really, they are really high performing, and I'm just, in the non-profit space, I'm just doing this portion. So I really wanted to ask you, how would, a non-profit leader really, sometimes they can be young, they can be new to leading and working with boards. How do they overcome that feeling of, being smaller than the board member? How do you really get over that hump so that you can have that good working relationship?
Yeah. So I think an important point to remember is that the board member is there and has agreed to be a board member because they believe in you already, right? So it's not it's not somebody who you have to necessarily impress per se, but they are there because they want to support you, right, and your journey. And in some ways, some of them are, myself included, are inspired by the work you do, right? I would love to do that. I just know that I wouldn't be able to do it. And I have people, like you guys who are so, determined, so resilient, and so willing to do so many other things beyond just yourselves, right? So I think it's important to firstly remember that is the case, right? They are there because they want to help you. I think secondly, it's about being prepared. You need to be of course you need to know what you want when you go to a board member. As you mentioned, most of them, they're on multiple boards, they don't have so much time. So be prepared for the meeting, right? Be clear about what you want out of the meeting. So it's not about sending me a 40-page report and expecting me to go through it. Most board members will not do that, but be very clear about what exactly you want from the board member. Is it a decision that you want? Is it insight or input into something specific, right? So just be very clear about that and have that open, transparent conversation. Yeah.
And to add on to that a little bit, right? One of the things that we can do all that, and what if, the board member still does not, do that? So what I'm trying to say is, how do we hold our board members to account? But do it in a really, understanding and graceful way, if I put it that way. How do we actually ask a board member, follow up with them and say, oh look, you've said you're going to introduce us to XYZ corporate, but that hasn't happened yet. And how do you broach that topic, especially sometimes, again, going back, right, for me, there may seem to be a power dynamic going on where, we report to the board. So it's a little bit, for me, a little bit challenging that how would you approach that from both sides?
So I think it's most of your board members, they are used to working in an environment where there's some level of accountability, right? I mean, you don't get to that level having no accountability. So it's, most of them will already have that. So I think I will do exactly that. I mean, just come from a place of, this is what we discussed before, these were the minutes, and I'm doing my job to follow up with you, right, on these things. I think this is what we said the last time. Can I know how it's going, right? So I think that's perfectly reasonable coming from the management end. And likewise on the board end as well, right? I think when we raise questions and so forth, there's also the right time and place to do it. You often, I mean, what I try to do anyway as a board member is I privately ask the ED about certain things that may or may not have been followed up on and what's happening there, rather than do it in front of the whole board or in front of the whole committee, right? So I think it goes both ways, right? It's not just the board down to management, but also management. It goes both ways.